Game collecting has gone off the rails. Prices have exponentially risen month over month. Better buy now or they'll get higher. Or maybe you should watch this video first. Welcome to Retronomics, the series that follows price trends in video games. In last Retronomics video, I covered the Xbox 360 video game prices, and while prices were increasing, it wasn't the games that were actually good, and if you cut out all the collector's editions and special systems, the amount of games that increased in value were actually not a lot. But that's the Xbox 360, a system that's 18 years old at this point. Surely the PlayStation 2, a system that's turning 25 next year, would be higher, right? Right? Well, I hope it's pretty obvious that I'm being facetious here. Sure, video game prices have saw a surge in value since the start of 2020. I did a comprehensive video on it a while back. But lately, it does appear that the boom has finally subsided, but that doesn't mean that the boom is about to go bust. Before we get into PS2 prices, here's how Retronomics works. I get all of my prices from Pricecharting.com, which gets their listings from eBay sold listings and sold listings on their site to determine a trend. The value of each game isn't necessarily what you should pay, but a reference for sellers and what they should charge. Sure, you can find games for less or pay more for something in better condition, but for the sake of this video, we're talking about price trends. The prices are from the start of the year until June. They're North American complete in-box copies. I included every listing that Pricecharting has on the console, including accessories, prototypes, and random knickknacks Pricecharting happens to put on their site. PlayStation Magazine demo disc? Sure, why not? That being said, I only evaluated prices on items that were on the Pricecharting's price list in January of 2020 and had a price over $1 for every month since then. If it was even missing one price, I excluded it. Out of the 2,048 PS2 listings, I reviewed the prices of 2,199 listings. So, with that out of the way, let's get into some price trends. At the start of 2024, the total of all the listings was $45,434. The total at the end of June was $47,672, for a total increase of $2,237, which is a 5% increase in just 6 months. Is that a lot? Well, compare it to the Xbox 360, which rose 12% in 5 months, no. And when you compare the PlayStation 2 prices over the past 4 years, it's significantly lower than the first 6 months of 2020 and 2021, which both saw increases over 20%, but it is more than the first 6 months of 2022 and 2023, where prices didn't increase more than 3% the entire year. 2023 actually saw a 3% dip, which offset 2022's gains. Which means that while the PlayStation 2 is up overall for the first half of 2024, it's not enough to panic and go buy all the games. That's illustrated much better by the breakdown of the listings by the price bracket. At the start of 2024, 1,700 games were under $20, 319 between $21 and $49, 106 between $50 and $99, 47 between $100 and $200, and 14 over $200. Fast forward to June, 1,661 were under $20, 360 between $21 and $49, 111 between $50 and $99, 53 between $100 and $200, and 14 over $200. Even when you consider that the bulk of the under $20 items are accessories of some sort, when I took a look at my own personal PlayStation 2 collection, it was pretty accurate. I don't have a large collection, but I do have a lot of console-defining games. Gran Turismo 3, Grand Theft Auto series, Final Fantasy X, Shadow of the Colossus, Metal Gear Solid. Fantastic, critically acclaimed games that can be had for less than $20 each, complete in the box. Sure, I have some more expensive games, Parappa the Rapper 2 being the most expensive, and I sold off all of my Silent Hill PlayStation 2 games, but if you were to sort my collection of games, the price distribution is similar to the overall market. To visualize the change even further, let's break it down by amount change. 62 listings had no change at all over the past 6 months, but the majority of the listings increased $5 or less, with 84 rising $6 to $10, 37 $11 to $20, 19 $21 to $49, and 4 listings rising $50 or more. And while that looks a bit lopsided, when you compare the change to the starting value, the percent increase has a much more natural distribution. 57 games rose less than a percentage point. 264 rose 1 to 5%, 252 6 to 10%, 344 11 to 20%, 328 21 to 49%, and 43 50 to 99%, with 2 listings that more than doubled in value. So half of the listings increased between 10 and 50%, which, going by the breakdown of the dollar value, means that a lot of these listings were pretty inexpensive to begin with. Let me know if I should be excluding listings that are less than $10. I think it's relevant, but I could be wrong. Here's the breakdown of the top 25 games that increased in dollar value. Nothing really surprising. Kuon, Rule of Rose, Haunting Ground, rounding up the top 10 with the Guy game in there. And I get that this game is notorious, but I wouldn't be caught dead with this game in my collection. I'm just saying. The surprises come in the form of percentage increases though. Guitar Hero, trivia games, Dance Dance Revolution, but of course there's some that shouldn't be a surprise at all, like the Shin Megami Tensei series, which I think will always be popular unless they re-release all of them on modern consoles. Gallop Racer 2004 though, this game is just weird. It's a horse racing simulator, and I just think that that's cool. And I got it for like 99 cents, so like, whatever. But it's still inexpensive even though it rose a lot of money. Now on to the listings that decreased the most. Factoring in the 62 that didn't change at all, the majority of the 844 listings that dropped in value dropped less than $5. 407 under $1, 386 $1 to $5, 26 dropped 6 to 10, 14 dropped 11 to 20, 10 dropped between $21 and $49, and only one listing, the Bullies Collector's Edition, dropped between $50 and $100 at $95.40. Again, it's a lopsided distribution, but unlike the increases, the majority of the listings that dropped in value dropped less than 10%. 46 listings dropped less than 1%, 265 between 1 and 5%, 189 between 6 and 10%, 236 between 11 and 20%, and 105 between 21 and 49%. And just one game, PDC World Championship Darts 2008 dropped 57.92% in just the past 6 months. And it might sound weird for a darts game to be worth so much in the first place, that a change in price was so significant, and that's because it is. This game went from $4 in June of 2021 to almost $100 in September of that same year, and it's been losing value ever since. I guess the darts community isn't as strong as it used to be. But seriously, this is one example where the game is fairly rare, so sales are few and far between, making it a great opportunity to discuss exactly how price charting works and why I do my best to identify outliers like this. The game has so few sales that you can see all of them going back to 2009 when price charting first started tracking this game. In 2021, there were 3 sales in a row for around $100, and price charting reacted by raising the price over those 4 months. The first sale in June didn't affect the price going into July, but the next sale in August showed price charting that this wasn't a fluke, so the price is reflected, the same with the one in September. And then, when there weren't any more sales, the price automatically started to settle to account for the sudden surge, but not immediately back to $4. It stopped a year later at $74.44, where it stayed until there was finally another sale in 2023 for half of the price of the last sold listing. Price charting adjusted accordingly, and each subsequent sale that's been lower than the previous sale has signaled to price charting that the price should be closer to what it was prior to 2021. Which is why it's so important when you are looking at price charting as a buyer, you should consider more factors than just price charting value alone, especially with rare games like this. Popular games tend to have a more accurate representation of the sales, but like I mentioned at the top of the video, price charting is more of a tool for sellers than it is for the buyers. What you're willing to pay for a game versus what price charting has it listed could be way off. Given the climate of video game collecting, some sellers just use price charting and call it a day, where some others, like myself, will use price charting as a jumping off point and price depending on the overall condition and how fast I want something to sell. I gotta imagine that a super niche sports game from 2008 isn't exactly flying off the shelves at $10, much less $100. When a price jumps like this, it can prompt the seller to adjust accordingly to maximize their profit and take advantage of the FOMO that buyers are having to get a game before it gets too expensive. And in a lot of cases, they end up overpaying. Luckily, this game is so rare and undesirable that the bubble was short-lived. But that's why I use price charting's data. The sales history that price charting showcases gives me a good idea of how a game's value can fluctuate. I get comments every now and then about how they don't take into account other factors like condition and if they have a registration card or not, but honestly it doesn't matter because those sales will affect how a seller prices their games regardless of those factors. So a game losing a ton of value just because it's missing a couple of key factors is good for you, the buyer, because a lot of sellers are lazy and they just want to move product. Speaking from experience working at an independent game shop, rarity doesn't exactly equal popularity, and just because you're in the know doesn't mean that people are kicking down the door to get a copy of PDC World Championship Darts 2008. Anyway, I hope that you're still around after that tangent, so here's the top 25 games that lost the most value, and most of the list contains limited editions, which makes sense given how I explain price charting. If you skipped ahead in the chapters, go back and listen to it. Some notable games that lost value are Armored Core games and Xenosaga. And it's weird to see Nightmare Before Christmas on there, but these oddball games losing value are markers that the overall condition of the PlayStation 2 market is starting to correct, and we might see more prices start to drop with some outliers sticking out. That's further illustrated by the top 25 games that lost the most percentage-wise. Greatest hits games are losing value. I know that variants were huge for a while, but personally I just prefer the first run, even though in some cases the greatest hits version has some tweaks that either fix balancing issues or added some additional content. Time will tell which PlayStation 2 games will rise and fall in the next few months, but the next console that I'm going to talk about, the GameCube, has been on track to lose value for 2 years in a row now, so make sure you stay tuned for that one. That's going to do it for this episode of Retronomics. Are you going to start collecting PlayStation 2 games, or are you broke from the Xbox 360 boom? Make sure that you like the video and share it with those who like video game price trends. Seriously, it's the best way to help the channel out, and because as interesting as people find the series, YouTube doesn't recommend it as much as I would like, so I'd really appreciate it. And if you aren't subscribed, this is your chance to do so if you enjoyed the content. You can follow me on social media at Nicktendo. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Nick, and I'll see you next time.